Hi everyone, this is our AP Latin teacher, Ms. Divix. Mr. Divix, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Mr. Brian Dibbitts. I've been teaching Latin for 18 years. This is my third year at Georgetown Prep. I majored in classics at the College of the Holy Cross in Worcester, Massachusetts, graduating in 2003. And Latin's just been something I've enjoyed ever since high school.
Yeah, that's perfect, Mr. Divix. So I have a few questions for you. So firstly, you have studied and teach Latin for a really long time. So in your perspective, what do you think learning Latin brings to high school students in the context of reading comprehension, logical thinking, and language abilities?
I think it brings several things to those things. First of all, I think that Latin teaches you language on a very basic, granular level. It helps you understand the nuts and bolts of language, whether it's parts of speech, like nouns, adjectives, and verbs, or whether how to use those things in different ways. For example, the difference between active verbs, passive verbs, and linking verbs. So in that sense, Latin teaches you just the basic mechanics of a language. But I also think it definitely does much more than that. As far as reading comprehension and logic, one of my former students who graduated from high school a little while ago in 2015, his name was Kellen. Kellen put it very well. He told me that even though he was in law school at the time, that Latin was a major influence upon his thinking, because he said that it was a constant exercise in logic all the time. It was about learning how to use endings properly, declension endings, verb endings, etc., and then just rigorously applying them in a logical manner. And he said that was something he carried with him all through undergrad and even into law school too. He just graduated from law school at Harvard and got a job at a firm, I think, in Boston. So lastly, about reading comprehension, I think that there's basically two different steps of coming up with a translation in Latin, as I've told you guys a lot. First of all, there's just reading a passage. It could be a sentence, or for a very long sentence, it might be like reading a clause or two, and then thinking about the basic meaning, and only then trying to rigorously obey the grammar rules. So that the word translate itself just comes from one Latin word trans, meaning across, and then the late part comes from the Latin verb fero fere tuli latum, which means to carry. So when you're translating, you're literally carrying something across. Carrying what? You're carrying meaning across from Latin into English. And that's where the reading comprehension kicks in, because you're not just understanding the Latin, you are trying in your own mind to express it in the most accurate possible way in English. So you're performing an active task. You're not just passively reading, you're actively considering, how do I best take what I'm reading in Latin and putting it into English as accurately as possible. And that means you're ideally thinking hard about and comprehending what you're reading, because that task is impossible without really applying yourself mentally and thinking, what am I actually reading, and how can I best put that into English?
Yeah, it's just a really great response. And